hi, you've probably all been wondering where the heck is she with the next chapter. Well, here I am. And I will say I've actually recorded this a couple of times now, but I've not been happy with them. So I was going to actually record this one. I was away last week visiting my family in Wales. So I was going to record this chapter on the ferry coming back, because I just felt the travel and the crossing of the sea and just being, you know, in a place I love, because I love the sea, would help this, but there were too many people. And so I thought, right, that's out. Going there was great. I could have done it going there. I should have taken the opportunity, but coming back it was a lot busier than I thought. So I didn't have the privacy to do that. So here I am today, getting on with the next step in this journey. Now, I will say to you straight off, this book, albeit we've been going from chapter to chapter and we've been doing the activities within each chapter, that's not where it all ends. Once you've finished one chapter and gone to the next, that's not the end. But it's like a ball, it's sort of gathering and growing. Once we have finished this book, that's not the end of this journey. To be honest with you, it's just the start. This book is the key to unlocking the skills, talents, tools you will need to carry out investigations into your ancestral past using Ancestral Tarot. And I have found it, as we've progressed through this, I have found each chapter more interesting than the last, because we're delving that little bit deeper beneath the layers that is our ancestry. Now, once we get to the end of this book, we have been given what we need sort of to cover the surface of what we know. What we want to then do is use the skills that we have learnt and use the book for referencing, as a guide of reference, to go back again and look at further back in our ancestry, look at different aspects of our ancestry, go to the different branch of the family tree, that sort of thing. And it's all here to guide you. I haven't yet got into the book by Brian Sykes, the Seven Daughters of Eve. I'm waiting to start that once I finish this. And today, running in tandem with this, I'll be starting the Wild Magic as well, which is working with the Wildwood Tarot. Sorry, I just bumped you there. Now, by rights, we should be going on to chapter 6. But as you can see, I have sort of pinned these two chapters 6 and 7 together. And the reason that we're not going into these now is because this is a deeper level that I intend to go back in my own personal time. If you recall, at the very beginning of this adventure, we sort of were working out, well, which ancestors am I going to work with? Am I going to work with ancestors of blood, ancestors of place, or ancestors of time? And as I worked through it, it worked out for me, both my own choice and the spreads that we used, that ancestors of blood were the ones that I would be sort of working with now. I will go back again and look at ancestors of place and time, using what we have already used with some little tweaks here and there later on. In the meantime, we're now skipping over to chapter 8. And in chapter 8, it talks to us about keeping a tarot journal. Well, as you know, I have been journaling my way through this from the word go. But also, what I like about the hints and tips it gives you here about keeping an ancestral tarot journal. Sorry, didn't realise that was hitting off that table, just bear with me. What I didn't realise that although it advises you about keeping an ancestral tarot journal, one of its, in its own right, the hints and tips that are given in here are great for all forms of tarot journaling. And it also happens that in this next chapter, I've actually referred back to another one of my tarot journals that I have been keeping. It's not this one here, move that there. This one here. This is one that I've been keeping for a while. There's still a long way to go in it, but this one has a lot of other things besides tarot. We'll just have a quick look in. We have the tarot symbols. we have numerology. Okay, we go on to look at our elements. Sorry, couldn't think of the word for a minute. We go on to look at elements. We also go on then to look at astrology, and astrology figures heavily in the second part of chapter 8. So albeit the first part is telling us about keeping a journal, if you are already keeping a tarot journal, if you are aware about keeping a tarot journal, you can skip the first half, and it says just as much in the book. You can skip forward to the next section. The next section is looking at astrology in the Ancestral Tarot, and it's actually very in-depth and quite enjoyable. But when you bring in astrology, you're also looking at the elements. You know, you'd look at the house in the astrology sort of wheel. You look at the traits that come in the house. You look at the traits that come from that particular sign. So if you're looking at Aries, what are the it's a fire sign that represents pioneering work. It's the ram, it's the adventurer, the explorer, the builder, etc., etc. But then you also look at what fire signs. So we know that fire signs have three qualities of energy, vitality, spirituality, and vision. They're explorers of can't read that. And sort of explorers anyway. Okay. Sorry about that. I couldn't read my own writing there. I need to sort that out. Qualities of written work. I haven't a clue what I wrote there. So, yeah. Vitality, spiritual and vision. And explorers of their culture or something like that. My God, my writing. Anyway, so it was nice to be able to say, well, work that I've done in other journals in the past have actually helped me in this current journey. So let's get on and have a look here. So keeping an ancestral tarot journal. Like I say, it gives you great advice, you know, your morning intent, which ancestor you're working with, the card you drew or the spread you used, if it's a spread, which cards were drawn, your analysis of the card, daily intent, getting to know your journal spread. Now, the getting to know your journal spread was new to me. I have never done a getting to know your journal spread because I feel that the fact that I am writing and it's my own written word in my journal, it's the way I want it displayed, whether it's an arty kind of journal, whether it's an info journal, whether it's just my own written word and my projects, it's got my energy in it. However, there's a spread here that's getting to know your journal, a little bit like the spreads people use for interviewing decks, and again, that's not something that I have really utilised in my practice. I have done one interview with a Deviant Moon deck, and it was actually unbelievably accurate, and I said to myself then, oh, I'm going to use this again, but I actually haven't got round to doing it. So this gives you all that information. What we're going to move on to now is adding astrology to your tarot journal practice. And I'm going to open up my own notes at this point and tell you what I did for this section. What we looked at in this book is this wheel, okay? And this wheel has 12 different houses. Each house has a specific meaning. Okay, plays a specific role. So when you look at it in the book, it's blank, okay? And the one I have shown you here is one that I have worked and filled in. Now, what do you put in it? Doesn't really give you information. It shows you the wheel. Each astrological house rules a specific part of life. Now, the specific parts of life are, right, the first house, which we will find here. It's sort of going anti-clockwise. So this is the first house. And it goes second house, third house, fourth house, fifth house, etc. So the first house is the self and your body. The second house is your possessions and the things you value. The third house is communication and your siblings. The fourth house is mum, dad, home, and this is an important one for ancestral work. The fifth house is children, creativity. Sixth is health and work. The seventh house is relationships and partnerships. The eighth house is inheritance and death. Now, inheritance and death, but it's also, if you look and research elsewhere, transformation. So as we know, the death card is transformation. So this can sort of, the death of a situation, a death of a period, the ending of a particular stage of your life. If somebody's ill, it could potentially mean that the death and the transition of someone from this to the next world. And then we have ninth house, higher education, long distance travel. 10th house is profession and public image. 11th house, friendships and community. And the 12th house is a secret, hidden life. And it's what's buried beneath. And in that one, it's sort of the house of sacrifice, okay? Now, each of those houses are also linked to astrological signs. So the first house is Aries, then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra. And that's sort of, what did I say 7 was? Again, 7, relationships and partnerships, okay, and balance. It's the house of balance as well. Then we have Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces. And then in that, you fill in, or you look at all those aspects and the cards that you draw for each one of those. So you choose an ancestor that you're working with. So I am going to choose an ancestor now. Now I have done this for 3 other ancestors, but I'm going to share this particular one with you that I'm working with, the 4th ancestor. So what we do here, there are 2 different ways to do this. If you're working with an ancestor who you knew fairly well when they were here on earth, before they passed on to the spirit, if you knew this person very well, then this spread would be the one that you could use. Basically, you shuffle your deck and you draw 1 card per house, okay? So you would need 12 cards for this. And you would set them out, and what is fun to do is to set out a second circle of 12 cards, and that's you. So when you read the ancestors, you can then read yours and get a comparison of what's the same, what's different, and what traits that you can see have been passed down through the line. Where again, this is where we look at, are things that we do passed down genetically through our DNA, or are they learnt behaviours? Are they learnt, you know, that through, you know, if you have, say, been adopted into a family, do you have that trait because you've learnt it from the people that you're living with, or do you have something that's quite different that might have come down through the genes? So that's really an interesting one to do. If you're working with somebody who's passed, that's very close, then I recommend you do that. It's only 1 card per house. It's 12 cards per ancestor when you've known them very well. If they're ancestors from your past that you didn't know, so if it was like a great-grandparent or a great-great-grandparent or even further back, what you do, you will need more than 1 deck. Ideally, nearly 12 decks. That's 1 deck per house. And so you'll be looking at what? 36 cards for 1 ancestor. Because what you would do, each deck would be split into majors, minors and courts. And in that, what we do here, it's a much deeper reading to get to know people that you didn't know here on earth. You know they're related to you through tracing your family tree, but you did not know them on a personal level. So you split your deck into the 3, as I've said, and the majors are the theme of that person's life as it relates to the house, okay? So if you say, we look at house 1, which is Aries, the house of self, and say now we drew the devil. So it's the house of self. That's looking at that person, that person's, themselves, and we've got the devil. Were they manipulative? Were they controlling? Were they devious? were they controlled? You know, so that's the sort of thing you'll be looking at. So minors are their everyday life. So say now you drew the Seven of Swords, so we've got the Devil and the Seven of Swords. Were they honest, dishonest? Were they thieves and vagabonds? Were they people that would be living on the sort of nefarious side of life? And then you get the personality card in the courts, and that's their personality in the cloak of that house. So the cloak could be, okay, so it's looking at self. So you've got the Devil and the Seven of Swords, which straight away thinks, my God, this might have been somebody from my ancestor, my lineage, that might not have been that nice a person, but they drew the, say, King of Pentacles, and that's the cloak. Is that the outside face that they're showing to the world? That there's somebody who's kind, caring, generous, has reached the sort of top of their game, respected in society, but actually they got there through nefarious ways, through sneakiness, through not being honest, through manipulation, you know. So there's all this that comes into it, and it's really very interesting. For this one that we're going to do here, I'm going to choose an ancestor who I was pretty close to, and we're going to see what traits this person and I share, if we share any at all, you know. So that's that there. Now, I've taken notes of an ancestor that I've already carried this task out with. It was extremely interesting. Not one I'm going to share here, but this next one I will be sharing. So it's all rather surprising. So let's get on with it, shall we? Now, I had put my cards away in bags because as you know, I've been travelling, so my decks have been nicely looked after in these boxes and bags, and so we're going to get them out now. I think for my own one, I'm going to use this one here. Sam, shh. And I think for my ancestral one, for this one, I am going to use, I've been using the Universal Celtic Tarot all the way through, but for this one, I'm going to use the Robin Wood, because I've used the Robin Wood with this particular ancestor, and you know, it just suited that ancestor. So let's have a look. Get my cloth back out on the table because that's being put away whilst I was away visiting home. Oh, Sam, will you stop? You're being a rascal. He hasn't stopped talking since I've got home. I think he might have missed me. So like I say, the two decks I'm using the Moon Baby Tarot. That's to represent myself, okay? And I'm using the Robin Wood. And the Robin Wood is going to be representing a close relative. So let's have a look here. And I think I'm going to put the red side up today. Yes, my nice bright red side. That's the side I usually have up. It can be a little bit confusing actually when I have that up. It's hard to see the difference between the cards and the background depending on the deck I'm using. So I'm going to give this a good old shuffle. Now, in this particular one, because it's a close ancestor, we don't have to worry about splitting the deck into majors, minors and courts, because we are using the whole deck and every card has an opportunity to come out and reveal, you know, what needs to be revealed. Now, the reason I would recommend using different cards if you're working on unknown ancestors, and it is recommended in the book, is that so that each card and each house can be represented by, has the potential to be represented by similar cards that have been used. So if you're pulling out a spread and you find that you already used the, I don't know, the King of Swords, and yet the King of Swords might be needed later on down the line, so that's where you'll need separate decks. You know, it's all very interesting. So we're going to draw out 12 cards. And then we're going to draw 12 cards from this other deck that represent myself. I'll give them a good shuffle. So I'm taking 12 off the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Isn't it funny when we're working with our decks how we feel we want to pull cards for a particular spread or reading? Now for this one, using the Robin Wood, I felt the urge to spread them out and pick out 12 individual cards, whereas with the Moon Babe we shuffled them and everything else, and I thought, no, I'm just going to pick 12 off the top. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Okay, we're referring to this chart, remember? So the house of self is at Aries. That is so spot on for my ancestor. And let's see what I've got. That's a bit, yes, I'd say that is a little bit white. Now, for the Aries, the house of self, for my ancestor, I have drawn the Hierophant. And the ancestor that I am working with for this one would definitely be a Hierophant type of figure. Okay, guiding, you know, helps to guide on the way, teaching, you know, albeit not particularly, not a teacher as such, but would help guide and help you as much as he could. And that was a side to him that was, you know, a lot of people would go to this person for help, for guidance, in the sense of whether it was business, for home. He was the one that we went to if we were stuck. Okay, so the Hierophant for the ancestor here. Somebody that's honourable, somebody that has a good moral compass, and somebody that is there to sort of look after his flock, so to speak. For myself, I got the Ten of Wands. And why would I get the Ten of Wands? Myself, let's have a look. And I feel I've got the Ten of Wands because I have had an awful lot to carry. I also tend to carry too much for other people. I like to think that I have got traits of the Hierophant in myself, as my career before I retired was as a teacher. However, I have had a lot of burdens to carry in the sense that I've had so many health issues. Had accidents where I broke my spine, I've had cancer, I've had pneumonia, I've had a variety of joint replacements, you name it. And yes, I have had an awful lot to carry. And yet, whereas the Ten of Wands is, you know, saying it's getting you down, it did get me down, but when you learn to delegate other issues in your life, it makes the carrying of that a lot easier. So I would say they're both correct, yep. Now let's have a look at the second house, which is the house of self, not self, that was the first one. The second one is the house of value, what we value, the sort of materialistic things in our life. Oh my goodness, that is so very true. Yes. Now every single one of my cards in mine's upside down because I shuffled the deck upside down, I've dealt it out upside down. So, what do we value the most? It's sort of on a materialistic basis, but let's have a look what it says in here. Your possessions, the things you value. Now, my dad, I'm talking about my dad. What did he value? He valued his wife. More than anything else, he valued his wife. And the fact that we've got the Queen of Cups there, and that's emotions, that is so true. He always said that, you know, he couldn't have got through life without the support and love he has of his wife. So although it's not that he saw her as a possession, but they both came together. Where you saw one, you saw the other, and it's just amazing. That should come out there. For me, so that was the Queen of Cups. For me, I drew the sun, and that's what I value. I value happiness. I value being alive. I value my hobbies and interests. That's what makes me happy, and it brings sunshine into my life. I love the summertime. The summertime is my favourite season of all, and all these things I value. All the hobbies and interests I have are, things that bring happiness to me. That is very true to us as people. Just bear with me, I'm just going to put the dogs outside. So far, so good. And do you know, it's funny because the things we value, albeit we enjoy, materialistic things. I love technology, I love painting, I love reading, I value my books and things. They bring me happiness. But the fact that it's the sun card, and the summer is my favourite time of year, and that I value happiness, joy, and being at one with myself and in my environment, brings me more joy than materialistic goods. And that was exactly the same with my dad. He valued the love and support of another person as opposed to material things. So the next one is the House of Sharing, and in that now, let's just see how it's put here. For communication and siblings. Okay, communication and siblings. I need something to hold this book open. I haven't got enough hands for this today. Right. So, communication and siblings. House of Sharing. For my ancestor, we've got the Hanged Man. And yes, looking at communicating and sharing on a different level, stepping back. In all families there's quirks, and would I say there was what sort of quirks? My father had one sibling, and it's not like they were exceptionally close. They became closer as they got older, but throughout life it'd be sort of look at things in a different way. How a brother might perceive something, or a relative, family might, look very different at different issues. And yes, it would be a case of sometimes having to step back and saying, well, should we just not say anything, or should we just sort of let them on and do their own thing rather than getting involved, and stepping back and taking time out. For myself, I got the Page of Swords, and for me, when it came to my communication and my siblings, communication, I've always been a bit impetuous. Yeah, and I've barged in and basically opened my mouth to change feet. So that actually fits. But equally with the Page of Swords, going out and studying and learning new things and communicating that to my brothers and sisters, helping them when they were younger in school, helping and guiding them as much as I could. But like that, I would be quite vocal in my opinions, and nothing's changed. So yeah, that too is pretty right. How does that compare? So far, you see, when you're stepping back and you're thinking before you speak, with the Hanged Man, I would barge in like a bull in a china shop. You can see that we both value people and situations more than materialistic things. And here we've got the Hierophant, who's the teacher, who helped me and guided me when I needed it, when I was carrying the load that was getting me down. So it's very, very interesting. You can make these comparisons. The Hanged Man. And what did I have? The Page of Swords. Page of Swords. Now, our fourth house is the house of Mum, Dad and Home. And as it says, this is an important one for ancestor work. Wow. Okay. So, yep. This is interesting. So, house of home and family. Now, we've got the Queen of Wands here. So what's that telling us when we're looking at the house of Mum, Dad and Home? And it's using, you know, how would the Queen of Wands fit in there? Now, what I like about the Queen of Wands, look at all the yellow. It's happiness, it's leading the way, it's being a guiding light, using creativity. And, you know, in his own way, my father was creative. He was really good at writing or telling stories and making up poetry. And he would help us in school doing all this sort of thing. But when it comes to house and home and parents, for himself as a parent, that he would be a leading light. He would be encouraging and he would push, you know, as a parent would. As a son, he was very much caring of his parents. He was very much a good friend with his father. His father was a great friend of his and supporter, and they were very, very close. And his mum would push for him to have a trade, to be able to go out and use his skills, and he ended up being a very successful businessman. And it's in a way, this goes to the sort of person he was. He had that kindness of a caring parent. He had the ability to see the ability of others and to see the positive and negative side, and to nurture and guide and tell others, well, you can do this. He was very, very supportive of me when I went back to university as an adult, and saw that I would be able to do what I could do, planting the seeds to grow and use my ideas and use my skills and talents and become a great teacher. Well, I say great teacher, become a teacher. That's me blowing my own trumpet. How mad is that? But that was because of the guidance and faith that Dad had in me as a parent. And it was a very similar thing for him as a son with his parents. There's a lot of hidden growth behind this. If we look, this Queen of Wands has an awful lot of sun, a lot of happiness, but she's also hiding the growth. Look at the sunflowers growing out behind her, and she's sort of hiding that growth, hiding that. And there were aspects that were hidden, and that with guidance and was needed and wasn't necessarily always given, from another angle, so to speak. For myself, I got the Three of Pentacles. So how does that come into Mum, Dad and Home? And this is, okay, it's planning, it's working together. And I'm very lucky I had that with my parents, the planning, the growing together, the making things work and being told that you put the work and time into it, you're going to be successful. Cross your T's and dot your I's. Make sure that everything that you've got planned for your future is planned with all the small print having been read. And that was a guidance that my parents gave me. For my home, it's, you know, planning and making sure that as a parent, that any pitfalls that my children try to plan their lives, that there aren't the pitfalls that I might have come across. Is there anything that I can guide them with in order that they don't face those same pitfalls? And unfortunately, we can't always put an old head on young shoulders, but they're in a guiding capacity. So that is quite deep, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, it's very, sometimes it's hard to word things, you know. You just think, I know what it's meaning, but does this sound a bit mad? I suppose it does in a way. I suppose all of us on here are a little bit mad. Right, now the 5th house is children creativity. So let's have a look. Okay. For children creativity, for my ancestor, we've got the 2 of Swords. And at a crossroads, you know, what decisions are we going to make in how are we going to guide them, how are we going to help them, and creativity. Now, my ancestor had a lot of abilities that he would hide under a bushel because it was a lack of confidence and shall I do this, shall I do that? When it came to his creativity, he hid his skills and talents. I'm quite certain he would have made a phenomenal children's author. But when it came to children, he would be there guiding. It would be more a case of, and it was the times we grew up in as well, that he would be the ruler, and albeit he'd be at a crossroads, probably he would be at a crossroads mentally and emotionally. Well, do I push or do I step back? As adults, he would sort of step back, let us make our decision, and then give us opinion when he was asked for it. As children, he guided us, you know. For myself, for children and creativity, I have drawn the Ace of Cups. The Ace of Cups, you know, lots of love, lots of attention, guiding them as best I can. My own creativity, I love writing poetry, I love writing stories. I've never had anything published or anything. I haven't even tried, but I have books of poetry that I've written. I'm in the throes of writing a detective story now. Will it get published? I don't know. Will I have the courage to go ahead and send it to somebody? Who knows? Maybe one day I will. But in as far as guiding my own children, you know, there's an abundance of love and support there for them, and it's reciprocated. Now, house number 6 is health and work. King of Swords. Well, he definitely reached the top of his game. He was a businessman, and his word was law. He guided, but he guided directly and honestly. He was the sort of person that if you asked for his opinion, make sure that that's what you wanted to hear, because he wouldn't woolly it up. He wouldn't turn around and say, oh yeah, oh, you know, yeah, that outfit looks really lovely on you, when it actually made you look like a dog's dinner. And he would just say, you know, no, I really don't like it. And if that offended you, well, then that's your own fault, because you asked him for an opinion. When it came to work, he was exactly the same. He would give an opinion, and he would never lay down the law in as, you will do this. It would be, here's my opinion. This is why I'm giving you this opinion. And if you're not going to take that advice and it all goes Pete Tong, then it's up to you to say, well, we should have listened to him in the first place. You know, he was very much in charge when it came to business, when it came to guide, you know, giving his opinion. When it comes to health, up until his latter years, he was always healthy, strong, and of clear mind, direct words, and somebody who you would want on your side, you know. For myself in that field, which is health and work, we've got the Five of Wands. Now the Five of Wands work, I wouldn't say that the Five of Wands pull in all directions. I worked in as part of a team in the jobs I've had throughout my life. I became a teacher. When I say late, in my middle age years, and I taught for over 20 years, and it was health that made it pull in the wrong direction. So where this is health and work, my health was what affected my work and what has got me being here where I am now. I've battled with cancer, I've battled with a broken spine, I've battled with joint replacements, pneumonia. It's been a tough one when it comes to health, but I've battled it and battled it in a positive way, and here I am, and that really does sit with accurately for me. Work-wise, I would put my cards on the table and say, well, this is what I think we should do here, there and there, and it was thrashed out and it was worked out as a team. So there was no actual pulling in opposite directions there, because we were all cogs in the one sort of machine wanting to work towards the same goal of giving children a good education. So that was the King of Swords and the Five of Wands. So house number 7 is relationships, partnerships. Page of Swords. Okay. Now, relationships and partnerships. And I have the Wheel of Fortune. So, relationships and partnerships for my ancestor. We've got the Page of Swords. In a way, I can see how this relates, but that, how I see that, I'm keeping that on a personal bit of information. But my dad had a strong woman behind him, and it's almost at times like she looked after him like a mum, and he was the person that would go forward and just cut paths new for the both of them, and in their younger years in a very sort of adventurous way, you know, making their own way in life together. And it was all very honest, very open, and they were both people who knew their own mind, who knew their the value of the spoken words, their clear communication, and greeted life every day like a new adventure, which was lovely. And that carried on until, you know, ill health took over in the later years. For me, I have the Wheel of Fortune. Yep. And when that comes to my relationships and partnerships, yeah, the Wheel of Fortune, there are good times followed by dodgy times followed by good times again. It's all one continual cycle, and a good one, a good wheel that I'm on. So that's well, that was 7, wasn't it? Yes. So for me it was the Wheel of Fortune. And how do I see these two, the connection here? Is there a similarity? Well, I suppose yes, because, you know, with the Page of Swords, you're sort of looking at life through younger eyes and a younger attitude, sheer determination, wanting to learn something new. And with the Wheel of Fortune, with it constantly turning, it brings something new with it all the time, and yet it would be new, progressive, moving on to different stages. And so there's that aspect of learning and growing with both of them, you know. So number 8, house number 8, or 8th house, inheritance and death. Let's have a look what we have here. Okay, and also transformation as well. Right, okay, this is very true. Now, inheritance and death. How would we see that? House of transformation, inheritance and death. we have the Nine of Wands. And there were a lot of changes. And, you know, my father would be, you know, we moved to a foreign country and we lived away for years. And he progressed in life, but that came to an end, and there was a lot of changes. There was the living and where he was born and grew up, that came to an end. Went abroad, did what he had to do there, that came to an end. Moved back, and he started all over again, and reached a pinnacle where he was his own boss, and his business successful, still going today, run by my brother, and it's all been good. But it sort of, albeit it was successful, could it have gone that little bit further? Could he have done a little bit more? So now younger feet have stepped into those shoes and taking things a little bit further, expansion and growth, which could have happened, but it was a case of never quite got there, if you know what I mean. For me, for death and inheritance, it's strength. And it's the strength to cope with change. It's the strength to cope when it comes to inheritance. It's the strength to have coped with the passing of my father. Who's this one we're reading here? And I have needed a lot of strength. I have needed that strength to continue knowing that I have that love and I still have that support from this man in spirit, and having the strength to keep that in my heart and in my head, because I don't think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to talk about this now, because I'd just be falling apart. Because, you know, people, when they pass and they've been strong in your life, it leaves a gaping hole, and it's having the strength not to fall into the blackness of that hole, but to find a path around it and a path over it. And my last words to each other, I love you. And that carries me through every day. So definitely good cards. So, what was that? Nine of Wands. Sounds like a ship at sea. It could be, I suppose. Not that far from the sea. And strength here. Now the next one is the ninth house, higher education and long distance travel. And we have strength, my father's, and for me we have the Queen of Cups. So higher education, long distance travel. Well, this man didn't get to go to higher education, but he did have the strength to carry himself through moving countries, taking on a new job that he'd never done before, and building the strength to go from being on a factory floor to being one of the general managers. And that was a number of steps. He ended up being head of quality control, and that came from personal strength and determination. And that wasn't just in him as a person on his own, but as a father, as a leader in work, and also as a guide. And we did travel. We travelled across the world, and we travelled across the world again just before he died. And he needed strength then, because unknown to us at that time, he had a brain tumour, and none of us knew, not even himself. And he wasn't 100% well, and it took him strength to get to the end of that holiday, get home. And he passed having done what he had on his bucket list, and that was to go on a cruise. So we did a cruise of the South China Seas, and took all his strength, but he's a strong, determined man, and he has a strong, determined daughter. And what did I get for that card for the higher education and long distance travel? Well, whereas my father did courses through work and moved up the ladder and became very much respected in the workplace, I was very lucky to get to university, and I have the Queen of Cups here, and I was very lucky to achieve a degree as a teacher. I have worked as an engineer, and I have done an awful lot of things in my life, and I've been supported both emotionally and at times financially too, when the need is as needed it. I've been helped, but again, long distance travel and being able to take my own children travelling and guiding them, and being there to say, let's take you across the water, let's see what's on the other side of the world, let's give you that opportunity to experience different aspects of life. So yes, those two cards are very much working together, sort of similar traits with strength, emotion, passion. So that was strength, and that was the Queen of Cups. So for number 11, the 10th house, profession and public image. My father's profession and public image. He really shone as a businessman. He shone with a great moral compass. His skills and talents were sort of searched out for. He guided and helped others, and he always sought perfection, and that's how he was seen. Somebody who was an achiever and who was a really good person, and who had all the necessary traits to not just be good in what he did, but to be in his profession and his public image, but as a person. And that was how he was seen in the world. I've got the Queen of Wands. So there we go. We've got the Ace of Wands and the Queen of Wands. So I would like to think, well, okay, people see me as creative, as being, having reached, a good standard in my own professional life and in my own skills and abilities and in my own public image. So that was very, very close. Ace of Wands, and for me, the Queen of Wands. I've got a couple of queens here, haven't I? Queen of Cups and Queen of Wands, yeah. So in the 11th house, friendship and community. Judgment. Now, we can look at this in two ways. My father was an honest man, and he could read people like a book. Yet he was never judgmental about people. He could turn around and say, well, look, be careful, but he would never judge a person. He would be a friend and a guide, and people would go to him with, well, what do you think? Do you think this is right? Do you think that's right? Or, but he would never turn around and knock somebody else for being who or what they were. So when we've got the judgment there, I think it was a case that people would more go to him. He made good judgment when it came to his own circle. He kept his circle very small and mostly family orientated. He did have a close circle of friends, and like I say, people would go to him for his opinion, which was nice, which was lovely. For myself, let's have a look. I have the Star. Both got a major arcana card there. Friendships and community. I do work in the community. I do voluntary work. I have although I used to have a great circle of friends, when you get to that stage in your life where you whittle down the wheat from the chaff, and you pick wisely. I am very lucky to have a supportive group of friends who accept me for me with all my quirks and my talents, my abilities, but also for all my interests. They don't sort of say, oh God, look, she's into all those cards, she's a little bit on the cuckoo side, where some could actually do that, but we don't mind them. So yes, it's that's pretty much right as well. So that's Judgment. And for me it's the Stone. And then for the final house, which is Secrets and Hidden Life, the Emperor. Now, this one is a bit of a Five of Swords. I'm a fighter. And would that be a surprise? No. I like to fight for what is right, and I don't hesitate to stand up for myself or my family. In my younger years, I'd fight if necessary. And my father as the Emperor, the guide, the strong one, his hidden side, he didn't realise just how much of a rudder he was to our ship as a family, and how we have been bobbing around on the waters rather rudderless, but we're getting it together. Slowly but surely we're getting it together. His hidden secrets and hidden life, he kept very much to himself. And if there were secrets, we wouldn't know about it because he'd keep that to himself. So if anything does come out, if anything does reveal itself, it will be a total shock, because he was exactly this man. Played his cards close to his chest, and he just put his head down and got on with it. Whereas me, I was the little bollocks that would fight and argue and do everything else that I probably shouldn't have done. I'm just going to attach a charger here. This is starting to give me signals saying I'm going to cut out shortly. This is quite apt, quite accurate, and even comparing, albeit we've got cards that would be quite different, the underlying message inside them sort of has traits in aspects of it, you know. Just bear with me. It's quite surprising when you do this how accurate they can be. In fact, it's a bit scary. There we go. It plugged in now. So that's the one reading for one ancestor, and I'm doing a comparative reading using the same spread to compare what traits that we've carried down through through genetically, and there are, I'd say, in their own way, a lot that work together, go hand in glove, and I have to say both of them are very accurate. So if I was now working with an ancestor that I didn't know, that somebody that goes way back, I would have used a few decks and done each house at one house at a time, using a major, a minor and a court, as I explained earlier on. And it really does make you dig quite deep. Now we've only scratched the surface of this, you know. It's been a reading that has given me and yourselves a look at the personality of the person, how they saw life, how they traversed obstacles, how they were seen by the public, and how what friendship circles and support they had, and what sort of support they were to others. And it's just that it's quite revealing. Now, if I wanted to dive deeper with an ancestor that I know, I could again use the cards like I did, like I explained, using the 3 separate piles. But I don't need to dig that deep on this one because this is a close relative, somebody I absolutely adored and still do. And so I was able to just pick up the one card for each house and say, well, actually that fits great. And because I was doing a comparative one with me as his oldest daughter, it was great to see the similarities and the differences that, you know, my dad would be a straight talker, I'd be a straight talker, but I'd also jump in. I just open my mouth to change feet, like I say, and sometimes wouldn't hesitate to get stuck in if I had to. So let's have a look at what else this says. This is a quick and easy method, okay, and it's one that you're sort of working with on a superficial level. So to dig deeper, you would go into using the using a number of decks, using 3 cards per house, and reading it very deeply. So this is bringing sort of the you know, looking at that as well, which I didn't touch on. This is bringing in the traits of each star sign to the house. So not only do we have the cards, but we would look at what the Aries energy is within that house. Whether it's earth, air, fire, or water element. What else that adds to it. So albeit I didn't use that in this, that's how much more you can use this spread for. So folks, that is the end of chapter 8, and we're coming up to chapter 9 next, which is pairing, and I'm going to go ahead and work on this now, and I'll report back to you when I'm done. Take care. Thanks for watching. Sorry this is so long, but it's very in-depth. Take care. I hope you enjoy discovering you and yours in the Ancestral Tarot. Bye now.